Hi, this is Marcia. Welcome to Yesterday's Kitchen for Today. I am excited because we have Chef Vadam here, and he's going to talk about gluten-free, how to have the biscuits, the pancakes, and all those other things, and still have a healthy gut. Today, he's going to do some homemade biscuit. Am I right?
That's correct, and bread.
Oh, and bread. I can't wait. So I want to take the time to say welcome to Yesterday's Kitchen for Today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Like Marcia said, my name is Chef Vadam Clementi, and just to tell you a little bit about myself, for about 25 to 30 years, I was dealing with gut issues. I was hospitalized off and on. I was diagnosed anything from irritable bowel to lactose intolerant to colitis. The list went on and on and on, and nothing was helping me. About 10 years ago, I was tested for celiac, and that came back negative. And so it was just dismissed. Well, about 2.5 years ago, I switched doctors, and she said, you know, I think wheat is your problem. Gluten is your problem. And I said, well, I've been tested for celiac, and that came back negative. She said, it doesn't matter. Do me a favor. Try for 4 months to go on a gluten-free diet and see if it will help. So I trotted to the grocery store. I picked up 1 loaf of gluten-free bread, 1 box of gluten-free bread mix, and a box of pasta. Took it home. I opened up the pre-made gluten-free bread. I took 1 bite out of it and threw it in the trash. I made the gluten-free bread mix. That was sufficient, but not satisfactory. It was sufficient. That's all I can really say. So I started looking and looking and looking at different recipes, trying to figure this out, because I am the main cook in my home. We also take care of an 88-year-old Southern mother-in-law. So it had to have her stamp of approval on this stuff. Well, time went by, and I was trying all of these different gluten-free, pre-made packaged flours. And at that time, I couldn't find anything that was even satisfactory. So I started playing with my own flour blends. Lo and behold, I found a flour blend that worked for everything that I needed it for. 2.5 years later, I make all of my bread, all of my biscuits, like Marcia said, my pancakes, my waffles, your batter for fried chicken, your batter for fish, your pot pies, your pastry crust for other pies, my cakes, everything. I had no problem. A lot of times with gluten-free cooking, they do add other product into the cooking to make it taste good. Bread and milk and other things. Eggs and milk and other things. However, like myself, it may be the wheat is bothering you. And you may find that even though you're adding more dairy to these products, to make a sufficient bread, so to speak, you may not even find that it's bothering you because it was the wheat after all. Let me tell you a little bit about celiac, just real briefly. What celiac disease is a person who has an autoimmune disease that is affected because of the amino acid in wheat, rye, and barley. It attacks the villi in the intestines. And what the villi is, imagine you're looking inside the thousands of feet of intestines that you have inside of you. Inside of those are all of these little fingers that are growing inside. Those fingers absorb all of the nutrition from your food, and then it goes into your bloodstream, into your body. Well, what happens is that amino acid in wheat, rye, or barley destroys that villi. Therefore, you're not getting any nutritional value from your food at all. And then on a number of occasions, because that is occurring, other autoimmune diseases will come to pass as well. Some people are going gluten-free simply because it's a fad for them. Some people are doing it because they're afraid of what we are doing to our crops. You know, with the pesticides, the Roundup, and all of those sorts of things that they're doing. Some people believe that there is this big influx of celiac and gluten sensitivity because of. Now, I'm not here to say that it is or isn't. I don't know. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Let's just leave it at that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but let's go ahead and get started, because someone who grew up in the South, I thought when I had to go gluten-free that I was going to have to miss out on my breads, my cakes, my biscuits, and it was not going to happen. Now, purchasing gluten-free bread, as I said, has grown considerably in the industry, and you can find decent breads. But I am a firm believer that we are what we eat. That's one of the reasons why Marcia and I connected right off of the bat, because I make everything from scratch. So what we're going to do is start off with our gluten-free bread. What we're going to start off with is a cup of gluten-free flour blend. And like I said, my flour blend recipe is in my cookbook. I've got 1 package of quick rise yeast, 2 tablespoons of milk powder, 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum. Now, what xanthan gum is a crystallized sugar that happens naturally in a winemaking process. And that gives the viscosity to the bread or whatever, the cake, whatever it is that you are baking, so that it will maintain its integrity as it's cooking and rising. And then you take it out of the oven and it may rise beautifully, but you want it to stay there, right? So the xanthan gum allows that to happen. Okay, so we've got 1 cup of the gluten-free all-purpose flour blend, 1 quick dry yeast, 2 tablespoons of milk powder, 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and what I have here is just 1 1/4 cup of whole milk, 2 tablespoons of butter, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Now I want this butter to be used later, so I'm just going to set this over onto the warmer and let it start melting. And I can turn my mixer on and just start the process of that beating. While that is beating, I'm going to use 3 eggs, 1 at a time. And even though from my mom and my aunt that taught me how to cook, they always put their eggs right in. But how many times have I done it and used a ruined egg? So I always now have put it into the pan. So I'm just going to scrape, make sure everything is incorporating. Start adding my eggs 1 at a time. There's my eggs. Let's make sure that this is moving around as it should. And from there, I will add the rest of my flour in intervals. Let this blend thoroughly, scraping the sides. And I can go ahead and add the rest of my flour right in. Let this blend for just a few moments. And that's done. I'm going to show it to you. This, I'll be honest, this is what threw me off in the beginning. Because when I first started making the bread, that just seemed too soupy. My aunt, if she was with me, she would have had me put a bunch of flour on the counter, then start kneading it, moving it around. No, I was totally shocked. So all I've done is treated my pan with butter and parchment paper on the bottom. Scoop that in. Get all the good stuff. And we're just going to let that be for just a moment. I'm going to scoot around here behind you just to make it even a little bit more delicious. Take a little bit more butter, drizzle it on top. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but when making breads or anything like that with yeast that has to rise, if the top begins to dry out, the rising process will stop. So you add just that little bit of extra butter to the top, and we're just going to set this right over into a warm area. Let that sit for a while. About 30 minutes, you'll see it rise. We'll bake it, and we're going to get some delicious hot bread in a minute.